With Pocahontas, Disney had tried to continue the formula that had made their previous films so successful. Unfortunately, it was so true to that formula that people started to see the strings attached, and no one was really interested. It all felt too obligatory. With The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Disney decided to do something completely different from their usual films. Unfortunately, it was so different that it didn't even feel like it was coming from the same franchise anymore. It seemed at first that search for balance wasn't going well for them, but with Mulan, Disney attempts to combine the old with the new, giving us an adventure story with a bit of magic while still trying to break away from the mold that we, by now, were all too familiar with. And for the first time since the Disney films had fallen on hard times, they actually succeeded. Mulan is the story of an only daughter who, at first, is simply being set up by a matchmaker to take a husband, but fumbles that responsibility and is left wondering what to do with herself. But soon China is attacked by the Huns, and one man from every family is given a conscription notice. As the Fa family has no male members except for the head of the family, Mulan's father is forced to fight for the emperor. But as her father is in no shape to fight, Mulan decides to disguise herself as a man and take her father's place. This is a story that takes a stab at the issue of gender roles, and provides possibly the most interesting take on this that I have ever seen. Usually in a story like this, the female protagonist will have some aversion to what is considered to be a strictly feminine role, and instead wants to do something that is seen as being typically masculine. In fact, in most Disney films, the protagonists don't want to fill the roles designated for them. Jasmine, for example, doesn't want to get married simply because society tells her she must. But here, Mulan doesn't really have a problem with trying to fulfill this role. She's just not very good at it. She honestly tries to be a good suitor, she just isn't cut out for this. But what was really a surprise to me is that the same can be said for her joining the military. Also, usually in a story like this, you would have the female lead already suited to what is considered to be a masculine role, and we would have this brash young woman showing these guys how it's done. But Mulan isn't automatically good at any of this, and it takes her a good long while to get into the swing of things. Through the course of her training, she struggles to keep up, and we reach a point where Mulan doesn't feel like she fits anywhere, which makes the moment that she succeeds at this very satisfying. What makes this story unique is that neither the female role nor the masculine role are said to be correct. It's all where Mulan fits in either of them. As I've stated in the past, I don't believe there is anything wrong with gender roles. There is only something wrong with assuming or demanding that each gender fall into those roles. Mulan is not about which one is better. It's not about Mulan preferring one over the other. It's all about Mulan discovering for herself where she belongs. No matter which of these roles she fits into, it's all about this character respecting herself and bringing honor to her family. Mulan is a very simple young woman and is thrown into complicated circumstances, but with the help of a few soldiers, she really starts to make an identity for herself. The friendships evolve and develop naturally, and each character is given just enough to do to make their presence justified. The film never falls too much into either the familiar or the unfamiliar. There is a steady balance of both. Moreover, the film makes an excellent decision of not trying to be overly dramatic or bombastic. Mulan is not trying to be a big movie. On the contrary, this is one of Disney's more humble outings. The story is simple yet deep, and that goes double for the characters. In this case, less is more. The simplicity carries over to the soundtrack and animation style as well, but most importantly, thanks to this simplicity, neither the characters nor the point is beating you over the head as it did in Pocahontas, Hunchback, or Hercules. And as a result, we can simply appreciate this film rather than constantly feeling like the film is trying to make us get it. Mulan is not about telling us that gender roles are wrong and that reversing them is right. It's all about Mulan finding herself and deciding these things for herself. Most importantly, however, is that no attempt is made to make Mulan a love story, a trope that seriously hamstringed other Disney films. In a lot of these later outings, it felt as though the love stories were being shoehorned into the story simply because, well, it's a Disney film and you have to have one. Mulan bypasses this awful trend altogether, which allows it to stay on point. The only major downside to this film is the villain. He's a generic antagonist who has little to say or do, and doesn't even encounter our heroes until the tail end of the film. But that doesn't matter much in this case because the film isn't really about thwarting a main villain. It's all about Mulan's internal journey of self. Comic relief is doled out in mostly modest portions and keeps things even, both during and after the more serious moments of the film. The balance is good, save for the character Mushu, who was possibly the most obnoxious comic sidekick Disney has ever created. Fortunately, his character is kept mostly in check and never overwhelms the experience of the film. As far as the later films in the Disney Renaissance era go, Mulan is one of the good ones. It tells a well-known story with a different take, and its humility allows it to thrive naturally. Certainly not as good as a masterpiece, but I highly recommend it to anyone simply looking to see a good film.